1805. The assembly rooms blazed with 1,000 candles, their light dancing across silks and satins as the finest families of Bath society gathered for the season's opening ball. Yet Miss Arabella Thornton stood apart from the festivities, a solitary figure near the marble columns that framed the grand ballroom. At 9 and 20, Arabella had long since reconciled herself to life as a spinster. While other young ladies her age had married and started families, she had remained at home, managing her widowed father's household and caring for her younger twin brothers, now away at Cambridge. "Miss Thornton, how lovely to see you," came the voice of Mrs. Pemberton, her father's distant cousin. The elderly woman approached with a knowing look in her sharp eyes. "Mrs. Pemberton," Arabella offered a genuine smile. "The evening is quite splendid." "Indeed it is." Mrs. Pemberton's gaze swept the room before settling back on Arabella. "Though I confess, I'm surprised to find you here. Your father mentioned he was unwell." Arabella's fingers tightened imperceptibly on her fan. "He insisted I attend. My brother's school fees arrive this quarter, and father hoped I might make useful connections." The older woman's expression softened with understanding. "I see. The gambling debts have worsened, then." There was no point in denying what half of Bath already whispered about. Colonel Thornton's losses at the card tables had become increasingly difficult to conceal. "We manage," Arabella replied with practiced diplomacy. "My dear girl," Mrs. Pemberton leaned closer, "managing is not enough when creditors begin to circle. Your father's commission pension can only stretch so far." Before Arabella could respond, a ripple of excitement swept through the assembly. Conversations died mid-sentence, and every head turned toward the entrance. "The Earl of Ashford," announced the footman, his voice carrying across the suddenly hushed room. Nathaniel Blackwood, 6th Earl of Ashford, stood framed in the doorway like a figure from a Renaissance painting. At 35, he commanded attention not merely through his ancient title, but through the sheer force of his presence. Dark hair swept back from a face that was more striking than handsome, all sharp angles and penetrating dark eyes that seemed to catalogue everyone they touched. "Well," breathed Mrs. Pemberton, "this is unprecedented. Lord Ashford hasn't attended a public assembly in, why, it must be 5 years at least." Arabella observed the reaction he provoked. Mothers straightened, fingers flying to adjust their daughters' curls. Young ladies practiced demure expressions, each hoping to catch the Earl's eye. "Why does he avoid society?" Arabella asked quietly. "Tragedy," Mrs. Pemberton whispered. "His wife died 7 years ago, along with their infant son. Fever took them both within a fortnight. He's been a recluse ever since, buried in his estate in Derbyshire." Arabella's heart contracted with sympathy for the distant figure, who now moved through the crowd with the reluctance of a man fulfilling an unwelcome obligation. "Your father approaches him," Mrs. Pemberton hissed suddenly, alarm in her voice. Arabella's blood turned cold. Her father, his face flushed with wine, was indeed making his unsteady way toward the Earl. The humiliation of what might follow, a drunken appeal for financial assistance perhaps, was too awful to contemplate. "Excuse me," Arabella murmured, moving swiftly to intercept her father. She reached him just as he opened his mouth to address the Earl. "Father," she said quietly, linking her arm through his, "I believe Lord Hampton wished to speak with you about that hunting matter." "Not now, Bella," he mumbled, trying to shake her off. "Ashford here might—" "Colonel Thornton," a deep voice interrupted, and Arabella found herself looking up into the face of the Earl himself. Up close, Lord Ashford was even more formidable. His dark eyes held shadows that spoke of old griefs, but also a keen intelligence that missed nothing. "My lord," her father stammered, straightening despite his inebriation. "I understand you have a daughter who manages your household with remarkable efficiency," the Earl continued, his gaze shifting to Arabella. "I wonder if you might introduce us properly." Arabella's father blinked in confusion before hastily performing the introduction. "My eldest, Miss Arabella Thornton." "Miss Thornton." The Earl's bow was precise, his eyes never leaving her face. "Lord Ashford," she curtsied, keeping her expression composed despite her racing heart. "I wonder if I might request a dance," he said, surprising everyone within earshot. For a moment, Arabella could only stare. Then, remembering herself, she placed her hand in his. "I would be honored, my lord." As he led her onto the floor for a country dance, Arabella was acutely conscious of the dozens of eyes following their every movement. "You're wondering why I asked you to dance," Lord Ashford observed as they took their positions. "The thought had crossed my mind," she admitted. "I require your assistance with a matter of some delicacy," he said as the music began. "And I believe you may be uniquely qualified to help me." The dance separated them before Arabella could respond, leaving her to puzzle over his cryptic words as they moved through the figures. When they came together again, she asked, "What sort of assistance, my lord?" "The kind best discussed in private," he replied. "I will call on you tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock. I trust that will be convenient." It wasn't truly a question. Before Arabella could formulate a response, the dance ended, and Lord Ashford bowed formally, escorting her back to where Mrs. Pemberton waited with barely contained curiosity. "Until tomorrow, Miss Thornton," he said, and was gone. Arabella stood motionless, her mind whirling with questions. What could the Earl of Ashford possibly want with her? The Thornton residence on Laura Place had seen better days. Though the address was respectable, the furnishings within had grown shabby, the carpets worn thin in places that new arrangements could not quite disguise. Arabella paced the drawing room, her afternoon dress of modest grey muslin freshly pressed, her dark blonde hair arranged simply but neatly. When the clock struck 3, the knock came at precisely that moment. Lord Ashford entered the room with the same commanding presence he'd shown the previous evening. In the afternoon light, Arabella could see the lines of strain around his eyes, the tension in his jaw. "Miss Thornton," he greeted her formally. "Lord Ashford, please, be seated." He took the chair opposite her settee, and for a moment, silence stretched between them. "I shall be direct," he said finally. "I am in need of a wife." Arabella felt the air leave her lungs. "I beg your pardon. Not just any wife," he continued, his voice measured and controlled. "I require a woman of discretion and capability. Someone who understands the practical nature of marriage among our class, without romantic illusions that might complicate matters." Arabella found her voice. "My lord, surely there are many young ladies." "I don't want a young lady," he interrupted. "I've observed you, Miss Thornton. You've sacrificed your own marital prospects to manage your father's household through increasingly difficult circumstances. You're practical, intelligent, and I suspect harboring no illusions about the transactional nature of aristocratic marriage." She felt as though the room had tilted. "You cannot be serious." "I am entirely serious." He leaned forward slightly. "I'm aware of your family's financial situation. Your father's gambling debts, the loans coming due, the threat to your brother's education. Without intervention, the Thornton name will be irreparably damaged within months." Heat flooded Arabella's cheeks. "You seem remarkably well informed about our private affairs, my lord. Information has value. I make it my business to know what I need to know." His expression didn't soften. "I offer you a straightforward proposition. As my countess, you would have the means to clear your family's debts and secure their future. Your brothers could complete their education without worry. Your father could retire comfortably. And in return?" Arabella's voice barely rose above a whisper. "You would manage my household, attend necessary social functions, and present a respectable facade to society. You would be mistress of Ashford Manor in Derbyshire, as well as my properties in London and Yorkshire. You would want for nothing materially. But not affection," Arabella said quietly. "Not companionship in any true sense." Something flickered in his dark eyes. "I can offer respect and consideration. But my heart..." He paused. "My heart was buried 7 years ago. I have nothing left to give in that regard." Arabella studied him, this man who spoke so coldly of marriage while grief still shadowed his face. "Why now, my lord? Why seek a wife after all this time?" "Duty," he said simply. "My title requires an heir. My estates need a capable mistress. And certain rumors about my reclusiveness have begun to circulate. A wife would silence them." "I see. You require a shield. I prefer to think of it as a mutually beneficial arrangement." He rose. "I don't require an immediate answer. Take 24 hours to consider. I'll return tomorrow at the same time." After he left, Arabella remained frozen on the settee. The Earl's offer was both salvation and prison. Security for her family, but at what cost to herself? A lifetime bound to a man who viewed marriage as merely another duty, who had been quite explicit that his heart was not part of the bargain. Yet what alternative did she have? Her father's debts would destroy them all. Her brothers would be forced to leave Cambridge, their futures blighted before they truly began. When her father burst into the room an hour later, his expression wild with hope, she already knew what her answer must be. "Is it true?" he demanded. "Ashford has offered for you?" "Yes," Arabella replied quietly. Her father seized her hands. "Bella, do you understand what this means? We're saved. An earl, by God. Not just any earl. Ashford. He knows about the debts, father. That's why he's offering. What does it matter?" Her father's desperation was palpable. "You're 9 and 20, Bella. Long past the age for romantic dreams. Ashford offers you everything we thought beyond reach." Arabella gently freed her hands. "I haven't given him my answer yet. He returns tomorrow." But even as she spoke, she knew the decision had already been made. When Lord Ashford returned the following afternoon, Arabella was waiting in the drawing room, her hands folded calmly in her lap despite the turmoil in her heart. "You've made your decision," he stated rather than asked. "I have." Arabella met his gaze steadily. "I accept your proposal, Lord Ashford." Relief crossed his features, there and gone so quickly she might have imagined it. "Nathaniel," he corrected. "If we are to be married, you should use my Christian name." "Nathaniel," she repeated, the name strange on her tongue. He reached into his coat and withdrew a small velvet box. "This was my grandmother's," he said, opening it to reveal an exquisite ruby ring surrounded by diamonds. The Ashford betrothal ring. As he slid it onto her finger, his hand brushed hers, a brief contact that sent an unexpected warmth through her. "We will announce our engagement at the Hartwell Ball next week," he continued. "The wedding will take place at Ashford Manor in 6 weeks' time." "So soon?" Arabella couldn't hide her surprise. "I see no reason for delay." His expression softened fractionally. "Unless you require more time to prepare?" "No," she said quickly. 6 weeks is acceptable." He nodded. "My solicitor will call on your father this afternoon to discuss the settlement. I've instructed him to address your family's most pressing debts immediately." Gratitude welled up despite her reservations. "Thank you, Nathaniel." He studied her for a long moment. "I believe we will suit one another, Arabella. We are both practical people with no illusions about what this marriage entails." As he bowed over her hand in farewell, Arabella wondered if he truly believed that, or if, like her, he was simply hoping it was true. The journey to Derbyshire took 2 full days in Nathaniel's well-appointed carriage. Arabella, now the Countess of Ashford, after a small but dignified wedding ceremony in Bath, watched the changing landscape with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. Across from her sat her husband, absorbed in correspondence. In the 6 weeks since their engagement, she had seen Nathaniel only a handful of times. Brief, formal encounters focused entirely on practical matters. Even their wedding had been conducted with quiet efficiency, followed by a perfunctory wedding breakfast before they departed for Derbyshire. Now, as man and wife, they were truly alone together for the first time. "We should arrive before nightfall," Nathaniel said, looking up from his letters. I've sent word ahead to ensure everything is prepared for your arrival." "I'm eager to see Ashford Manor," Arabella replied. "I understand it's quite beautiful." "It has been in my family for 12 generations," he said, and she heard genuine warmth in his voice for the first time. Parts of the original Norman structure remain, though most of the current building dates to the 16th century. "You love it," she observed. "It's my home." His expression shuddered again. "Our home now." They fell back into silence, but Arabella found herself studying her husband when he returned to his correspondence. In repose, his face held a melancholy that touched something in her heart. Whatever his reasons for this marriage, Nathaniel Blackwood was a man acquainted with deep sorrow. When the carriage finally crested a hill and Ashford Manor came into view, Arabella gasped. The house was magnificent, a sprawling Tudor manor of warm honey-colored stone, with multiple wings extending from a central great hall. Ancient oaks surrounded it, and beyond, she could see formal gardens and, in the distance, a river glinting silver in the late afternoon sun. "It's breathtaking," she whispered. "Yes," Nathaniel agreed, watching her reaction closely. "It is." A line of servants awaited them on the front steps, led by a dignified elderly man with silver hair. "Graves," Nathaniel explained as their carriage drew to a halt. "My butler. He's been with the family since my father's time." As Arabella descended from the carriage, she was acutely aware of the dozens of eyes assessing their new mistress. Nathaniel kept her hand in his as they approached the assembled household. "May I present Lady Ashford, the Countess?" he said formally. Arabella inclined her head graciously. "I am honored to meet you all and look forward to becoming acquainted with each of you." "Welcome to Ashford Manor, my lady," Graves said with a deep bow. "We are honored to serve you." One by one, the servants were introduced. Mrs. Davies, the housekeeper, cook, the head gardener Mr. Simmons, and many more. Last came a pretty young woman with kind eyes. "This is Mary," Nathaniel explained. "She will be your lady's maid." "Thank you," Arabella said warmly. "I'm sure we shall get along splendidly." Inside, the manor exceeded even her elevated expectations. Stone floors worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, tapestries depicting historical scenes, suits of armor standing sentinel in alcoves, and everywhere, the sense of history and continuity. Nathaniel led her through a succession of impressive rooms, the great hall with its soaring hammer-beam ceiling, the music room with a beautiful harpsichord, the portrait gallery where generations of Blackwoods gazed down with varying expressions. "Your chambers are in the west wing," he said as they climbed a broad oak staircase. "I had them refurbished, but if anything doesn't suit your taste, you need only say so." The Countess's apartments were stunning. A sitting room decorated in soft greens and golds opened into a spacious bedchamber dominated by an ornate four-poster bed. Beyond lay a dressing room and a modern bathing chamber. "Nathaniel, they're perfect," Arabella breathed, turning in a slow circle. For the first time, he looked genuinely pleased. "I'm glad." He gestured toward a door in the far wall. "My chambers adjoin yours, though naturally your privacy will be respected." Arabella felt warmth creep into her cheeks at this oblique reference to the more intimate aspects of marriage. "Of course. Thank you. Dinner will be at 8, he continued. "I thought you might wish to rest after the journey. Mary will attend you." After he left, Arabella sank onto a delicate chair, overwhelmed by the reality of her new position. She was a countess, mistress of this grand estate, wife to one of the most powerful men in England. And yet she had never felt more alone. The first weeks at Ashford Manor established a pattern that was surprisingly comfortable, if somewhat lonely. Arabella spent her mornings with Mrs. Davies, learning about the management of the vast household. The housekeeper, initially reserved, gradually warmed to her new mistress's genuine interest and respectful manner. By the second week, Arabella had toured every part of the manor, from the kitchens to the attics, meeting each member of the household and learning their roles. She reviewed menus, inspected linens, and began to understand the complex workings of running such an establishment. Nathaniel kept to his routine. He rose early, breaking his fast while reviewing correspondence in his study. Mornings were devoted to estate business with his steward. Afternoons he often rode across his lands or attended to other matters. They dined together each evening, sometimes in comfortable silence, occasionally in conversation about estate matters or books. It was peaceful but distant. Nathaniel remained unfailingly courteous, but the wall between them seemed impenetrable. On the 10th day, Nathaniel informed her over breakfast that they would be receiving a visitor. "My aunt, Lady Marguerite Blackwood," he said, looking faintly apologetic. "She lives in the dower house at the edge of the estate. She's expressed a strong desire to meet you." "Your aunt," Arabella repeated. "I look forward to making her acquaintance." "She can be forthright," Nathaniel warned. "Some find her intimidating." Arabella smiled. "I'm not easily intimidated, my lord." "Nathaniel," he corrected gently, and she saw something like approval in his eyes. That afternoon, they called upon Lady Marguerite in her elegant dower house. At 70, she was a formidable figure, tall, straight-backed, with piercing blue eyes and silver hair arranged in an elaborate style. "So," she said after the briefest of pleasantries, "you're the woman who has finally dragged my nephew back into society." Arabella took her seat under that assessing gaze. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Lady Marguerite." "Is it?" The old woman's mouth twitched. "We shall see." "Nathaniel, pour the tea. A gentleman should know how to serve." To Arabella's surprise, Nathaniel complied without protest, moving to the tea service with practiced ease. "Now then," Lady Marguerite continued, "tell me about yourself, and spare me the usual platitudes." Arabella considered carefully. "I'm practical by nature," she said finally. "I value honesty and dedication to one's duties. I enjoy reading and music, though I play only adequately. I believe in meeting one's obligations." The older woman accepted her tea. "And what made you accept Nathaniel's proposal?" "We both know it wasn't romance." "Aunt Marguerite," Nathaniel said warningly. "Nonsense. If she's to be the Countess of Ashford, she should be able to answer a simple question." Arabella met the challenge directly. "Lord Ashford offered my family security and offered me a position where I might be useful. I accepted because it seemed a fair arrangement for both parties. Honest, at least." Lady Marguerite's eyes gleamed with something like approval. "And now that you've had a fortnight to assess your bargain, are you satisfied?" "I find Ashford Manor and its people welcoming," Arabella replied carefully. "Lord Ashford has been considerate and generous. I have no complaints." "No complaints." A diplomatic answer. The old woman set down her cup. "Nathaniel, I wish to speak with your countess privately." "Go admire the roses." Nathaniel looked as though he might object, but after a moment's hesitation, he nodded. "I won't be long." Once alone, Lady Marguerite's manner shifted subtly. "I was married at 18, she said, surprising Arabella with this personal revelation. "To a man 30 years my senior whom I'd met exactly once. It was terrifying." "That must have been very difficult," Arabella said quietly. "It was. Yet we came to care for each other deeply, not immediately, but gradually, through shared experiences and mutual respect." She leaned forward. "My nephew is a complicated man, Arabella. He guards his heart carefully, and for good reason. Because of his late wife, Eleanor." Lady Marguerite's expression softened with old grief. She was delicate, both in body and spirit. When she died, along with their son, something in Nathaniel died as well. He blamed himself, you see. Thought if he'd been a better husband, somehow things would have been different. Arabella felt her throat tighten with sympathy. "He needs someone who can show him that it's possible to live again," Lady Marguerite continued. "To feel again. But it cannot be forced." "Our arrangement was based on mutual understanding," Arabella said carefully. "I'm not certain he would welcome any attempt to change its nature." "Arrangements evolve," the old woman said shrewdly. "I've watched you both today. There's potential there, whether either of you recognizes it yet." Before Arabella could respond, Nathaniel returned, and the conversation turned to lighter matters. But as they walked back to the manor later, Arabella found herself looking at her husband with new understanding. Beneath his reserved exterior was a man still grieving, still punishing himself for losses beyond his control. Something shifted after that conversation with Lady Marguerite. Perhaps it was understanding more of Nathaniel's history, or perhaps it was simply time working its magic, but Arabella found herself drawn to learn more about her enigmatic husband. She began joining him for his morning rides across the estate, appreciating his knowledge of the land and his genuine care for his tenants. When they visited the local village together, she saw how respected he was, how the farmers and shopkeepers greeted him with warmth rather than mere deference. "You care deeply for these people," she observed after one such visit. "They're my responsibility," Nathaniel replied. "And more than that, they're my neighbors, people I've known all my life." In the evenings, their time in the library became less about silent reading and more about conversation. They discovered shared interests, a love of history, an appreciation for classical literature, even similar views on politics and social reform. One rainy evening, as fire crackled in the great hearth and rain pattered against the windows, Nathaniel looked up from his book. "You're not what I expected," he said suddenly. Arabella raised an eyebrow. "Is that a compliment?" "Definitely." The corner of his mouth lifted in what might almost be called a smile. "I thought we would be compatible. I didn't anticipate that I would enjoy your company so much." The admission warmed her more than the fire. "I feel the same," she confessed. For a moment, their eyes met, and something passed between them, an acknowledgement of feelings neither had anticipated. But then Nathaniel looked away, and the moment passed. Still, something had changed. Nathaniel began seeking opportunities to spend time with her, joining her for breakfast, consulting her opinion on estate matters, even asking her to play the harpsichord one evening while he listened, his expression peaceful in a way she had never seen before. 2 months into their marriage, as autumn painted the Derbyshire countryside in shades of gold and crimson, Arabella realized with a start that she had fallen in love with her husband. The realization came as she watched him from the window of her sitting room, riding back from inspecting the home farm, his dark hair windswept, his expression thoughtful. Her heart contracted with a longing so intense it took her breath away. But what could she do with this knowledge? Their arrangement had been clear from the beginning. Nathaniel had been explicit that his heart was not part of the bargain. That evening at dinner, Nathaniel seemed preoccupied, barely touching his food. "Is something troubling you?" Arabella asked finally. He looked up, seeming to debate something internally. "I received a letter today," he said slowly. "An old acquaintance has written to say she will be in the area and wishes to call upon us." Something in his tone put Arabella on alert. "Who is this acquaintance?" "Lady Catherine Westbrook." He set down his fork. "We were once close. Before my marriage to Eleanor." Arabella felt her stomach drop. "I see. When does she wish to call?" "Tomorrow afternoon." Nathaniel's expression was troubled. "Arabella, I want you to know, whatever existed between Catherine and myself ended long ago. But she can be persistent." "Thank you for the warning," Arabella said, keeping her voice steady despite the anxiety rising in her chest. That night, she lay awake long after retiring, staring at the canopy above her bed. Who was this Lady Catherine? Had Nathaniel loved her? Did he still? The questions tormented her through the long hours until dawn. Lady Catherine Westbrook arrived precisely at 3 o'clock the following afternoon, descending from an elegant carriage in a swirl of fashionable silk and sophisticated perfume. She was beautiful, there was no denying it. Dark auburn hair, porcelain skin, and green eyes that sparkled with intelligence and something else, calculation, perhaps. "Nathaniel," she greeted him with familiar warmth, both hands extended. "How wonderful to see you again after all these years." "Catherine." Nathaniel's tone was polite but cool. "May I present my wife, Lady Ashford?" "Arabella, This is Lady Catherine Westbrook. Lady Ashford. Catherine's curtsy was technically perfect, but somehow suggested condescension. How delightful to finally meet the woman who accomplished what so many thought impossible, drawing Nathaniel back into the world. Lady Westbrook, Arabella replied evenly. Welcome to Ashford Manor. Over tea in the drawing room, Catherine dominated the conversation, regaling them with stories of London society and mutual acquaintances, each anecdote somehow emphasizing her long connection with Nathaniel. Do you remember that dreadful garden party at the Harrisons? She asked, laughing. When that ridiculous peacock chased all the ladies. You rescued me, Nathaniel. So chivalrous, even then. Vaguely, Nathaniel replied, his attention more on his tea than on Catherine. You were always rescuing me, Catherine continued, her gaze sliding to Arabella. So protective. I dare say I took advantage of your good nature more than once. The visit stretched on, with Catherine skillfully inserting herself into every topic, reminding them of shared memories, hinting at a deeper understanding of Nathaniel than anyone else could claim. By the time she finally departed, citing the lateness of the hour and the distance to the inn where she was staying, Arabella felt exhausted and inadequate. She seems very fond of you, Arabella observed carefully as they watched Catherine's carriage depart. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. Catherine was an infatuation of my youth. Nothing more. But you considered marrying her? Briefly. He turned to face her. My father disapproved. He was right to do so. Catherine is not constant in her affections. Understanding dawned. She was unfaithful to someone? To her late husband, repeatedly. And to me, before we could formalize any understanding. His expression was pained. I was foolish enough to believe her protestations of love. Eleanor showed me what genuine devotion looked like. Arabella's heart ached for him. I'm sorry, Nathaniel. He reached out and gently touched her cheek, the first such gesture since their wedding day. Don't be. Catherine taught me an important lesson, that beauty and charm are poor substitutes for integrity and kindness. That night, Arabella lay in her bed, turning Nathaniel's words over in her mind. He had praised integrity and kindness, qualities he'd said he valued in her. But was that enough? Could respect ever transform into something deeper? A soft knock at the connecting door startled her. Wrapping her dressing gown around herself, she called, Enter. Nathaniel appeared, still fully dressed, his cravat loosened, his hair disheveled as though he'd been running his hands through it. I apologize for disturbing you, he said. But I felt I owed you a fuller explanation about Catherine. You don't owe me anything, Arabella began. I do, he interrupted. You're my wife, and Catherine's appearance here. I don't believe it's coincidental. He began to pace the room. She wrote to me a month ago, expressing a desire to renew our friendship. I replied clearly that I was married and not interested. This visit is her way of ignoring my wishes. Why would she do that? Because Catherine is not accustomed to being denied what she wants. He stopped pacing, his expression troubled. I need you to understand, she means nothing to me. What I felt for her was infatuation, nothing more. It bore no resemblance to what I felt for Eleanor. The mention of his late wife sent a pang through Arabella's heart. And what of our marriage? She heard herself ask. Where does it fall in that spectrum? Nathaniel moved closer, his dark eyes intense. When I proposed our arrangement, I believed I was incapable of feeling anything beyond duty and obligation. I thought my heart had been buried with Eleanor. And now, Arabella whispered, hardly daring to breathe. Now I find myself. He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. You've surprised me, Arabella. Your strength, your kindness, the way you've brought warmth back to this house. I think of you throughout my day. I find myself seeking your company, your opinion, your smile. He reached for her hand. I don't know what to call what I'm feeling. But I know it's more than I expected. More than our arrangement stipulated. Arabella's heart soared even as tears pricked her eyes. "I've fallen in love with you," she confessed. "I know that wasn't part of our agreement, but I can't help it." For a long moment, Nathaniel simply stared at her. Then, slowly, he raised his hand to her face, cradling her cheek with infinite gentleness. "I don't deserve you," he murmured, "but I'm profoundly grateful for you." When he kissed her, it was with a tenderness that spoke of new feelings, fragile but real. Arabella melted into the embrace, allowing herself to hope that perhaps, just perhaps, their arrangement might become something neither had anticipated. Spring had come to Ashford Manor, transforming the grounds into a tapestry of blooming flowers and new growth. Arabella walked through the gardens, one hand resting on the gentle swell of her abdomen, the other linked with her husband's arm. "Are you certain you're not overtiring yourself?" Nathaniel asked, his concern evident. "Dr. Harrison said you should rest." "Dr. Harrison said I should remain active in moderation," Arabella corrected with a smile. "A walk through the gardens hardly qualifies as excessive." They had received the happy news a month ago. By autumn, there would be an heir to Ashford. Nathaniel's joy had been tempered with anxiety, memories of losing Eleanor and their son still haunting him. But gradually, with Arabella's reassurance and Dr. Harrison's confident pronouncements about her excellent health, he had begun to embrace the coming change. "I have something for you," Nathaniel said, stopping beside a rose arbor. From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box. Inside lay an exquisite sapphire pendant, the deep blue stone catching the sunlight. "When I proposed our marriage," he said softly, "I offered you an arrangement devoid of feeling. I thought I was incapable of love, that I had nothing to give beyond material comfort and social position." He fastened the pendant around her neck, his fingers gentle against her skin. "You've proven me entirely wrong," he continued. "You've shown me that love comes in many forms, not just passionate romance, but also deep friendship, mutual respect, shared joy in simple moments. You've taught me to live again, Arabella, to hope again." Tears filled Arabella's